Install cups, add a printer. Printer management on most Linux distributions, including Ubuntu Linux, is based on cups, the common Unix printing system. To install cups, run the sudo apt-get cups command. But wait a second. The UCP curriculum specifically includes the system-config-printer command, the tool adopted from Red Hat distributions. It's available on the Hardy Heron release from the system-configure-printer-gnome package, which is why I include it here. I've already installed them. Good. You may have already as well. Back to cups. In brief, cups is the Linux implementation of the Internet Print Protocol, IPP for short. This is the emerging standard which enables interoperability with other major operating systems. Cups on Linux can also help you manage printers configured to other services, such as LPD, JetDirect, PostScript, and more. Of course, on local systems, it can also handle standard parallel USB, infrared, and other local ports. When you see a cups configured printer, the address to that printer sort of looks like a URL such as www.vtc.com, but it's actually a URI, short for a Universal Resource Identifier. A URL is a subset of a URI. The cups service is governed by a number of configuration files in the etc/cups directory. My personal etc/cups/printers.conf file includes a couple of examples of that URI. Shown here and here. The first uses the HTTP protocol of a remote print server. The second specifies the host name of my home server, Ubuntu server, and the IPP at the start tells me that it's using the Internet Printing Protocol associated with port 631. Either URI can be used from Linux or even Microsoft workstations. With that in mind, now let's add a printer using the default Ubuntu tool, which can be started with the system config printer command. Now let's click New Printer. Follow along as it starts a wizard. First, you can specify a local device or a variety of network devices. For the purpose of this video, I specify an IPP printer. I specify the IP address of the host. I could specify the host name as well. I click Find Queue. It scans the server and finds the printers that have been shared from that server. I pick one. Click OK. Note the URI. I click Forward. It takes a few moments to search for drivers. Ah, there it is. I specify a make, which is really a manufacturer, or I could provide a PPD file, PostScript printer description file. Such files are commonly available from Microsoft Windows print drivers, so if a Linux print driver is not available, you could look for and use the ppd file. I specify the make, click forward, I find the model associated with my printer, there it is, and I see there are 5 drivers available for that printer. I stick with the recommended driver, and then I can specify the printer name. For the purpose of this video, I'll call it test printer. I give it a description. And location. The printer name is part of the configuration and thus has to be one word. The description and location are optional characteristics of the printer and can be human readable. I click apply. It applies the settings. And there's my test printer. Even though it's listed as a local printer, it has a remote URI. Printer management and administrators. One of the features of cups, at least as configured on Ubuntu Linux systems, is how easy it is to add a print administrator. You can take a user already on your system and give them administrative access to your cup system, and that administrative access is limited to the cup system. To see how this works, let's take a look at the main cups configuration file, etc/cups/cupsd.conf. Early on in the file, the second line as shown here, you'll see a description of a administrative user group based on the system group directive. In this case, it's lp-admin. To review the current members of that group, I review the etc/group configuration file. And as highlighted here, my username as well as the supervisor1 account are members of the group and are thus print administrators. If you want to add more users as print administrators, you have to add them to the lp-admin group, not only here in the etc/group configuration file, but assuming you're using the shadow password suite, you have to add them to the etc/gshadow configuration file, as shown here. Now let's get back to the main cups configuration file. Look at the 3 location stanzas. Note the allow at local directive in each of these stanzas. It supports access from systems on the local network. The require user at system directive in the 3rd stanza, or the 3rd location stanza, points to the system group directive that I just described and allows members of the lp-admin group and administrate cups from remote systems. With that in mind, let's take a look at the web-based administrative tool. While that's not cited in the current UCP curriculum, I believe it will be there in the near future. To review it, open a web browser and navigate either to localhost 631, or if you're on a remote system, you can access it with the IP address or host name of the system as shown here. Gosh, I can even access it from a Microsoft system. It includes a number of administrative interfaces. To implement a printer, you'll need the account information of a member of the LP admin group. So let's proceed. I click Add Printer. I specify an alphanumeric word name for the printer. I specify a location and a description. The location and description are optional and thus can be human readable. Next, I specify a device. A number of different devices are available. What you see may vary depending on what's detected on your system and network. I specify Internet Printing Protocol based on the Universal Resource Identifier described in another video. I then enter an appropriate URI of a previously configured printer. I click Continue. It takes a moment to check the database, and then I can select a make and model. If for some reason that's not available, Microsoft Windows drivers often include PPD files, that's PostScript printer description files, which might work as drivers. But I know my printer has a driver, and yours generally should too. I click a make, I select a model. Look at that, I have a choice of 5 different print drivers. So I select the recommended driver, and gosh, look at that, I'm prompted for my username and password. How about that? The printer has been added successfully, and I can configure more. Print management commands. There are 4 CUPS print management commands, not covered in other videos. CUPS disable disables a printer. CUPS enable enables or re-enables a printer. CUPS test PPD verifies the usability of a PPD, a PostScript printer description driver file. These driver files are commonly included with Microsoft Windows driver files. And CUPS add SMB adds a print driver, typically PPD print drivers, for use by Microsoft Windows clients on a Samba network. Now let's manage the status of printers with the CUPS disable and CUPS enable commands. To review printer names, take a look at your etc/cups/printers.conf configuration file. Any printers that you've configured should be in here. The first printer in here is DeskJet-1200C. So let's see what happens when I run the CUPS disable DeskJet-1200C command on that printer. Now take a look at the state and the state message. It's stopped and it's paused. Now let's re-enable that printer with the CUPS enable followed by the name of the printer command. And now the state of that DeskJet-1200C printer is that it's idle. Now it accepts print jobs and so on. These commands are useful for problems with the printer, such as paper jams. If you're low on ink, you may want to disable the printer so nobody prints to it, change the ink, and then re-enable the printer. Next, the CUPS test PPD command. It gets applied to a PPD file, generally with the PPD extension. cups test ppd. Sample ppd files, especially for systems where printers have been configured, are available in the etc/cups/ppd directory. And I see a number of ppd files available. I'll just pick one. It passes. I pick another. That passes too. Good deal. Finally, the cups add smb command makes Microsoft drivers out of available ppd files. One list of such drivers is available from the noted URL, and when you add Microsoft drivers, you need to enable access to them. To do so, you need to add the write list at pt1 directive to the print driver stanza in the Samba configuration file. pt1, as I've described in other videos, is the group of users configured as print administrators. Once that's done, you can add those drivers with the cups add smb command, specify a user who is a member of the pt1 group. You can specify a specific driver or all drivers, followed by the host of the print server. Let's just say it's the local system. This particular user also has a Samba-enabled password, and I have success.